It's December again and Christmas is upon us, but also Doscember. To most people of my age, 40 and a little bit above, MS-DOS was the first operational system they came in contact with, and how important was that to learn basic directory structure with the DOS file system. If you remember the early days of PC gaming, you know that the biggest challenge wasn't always to play the game. Sometimes it was getting the game to work. You would spend hours going through 200 floppy disks to install the game, and then you had to figure out the proper memory configuration to run the game with Sound Blaster and mouse support. Sometimes the game would provide you with a boot disk creator so you could boot off the floppy drive, and that would set up the memory accordingly for you. But sometimes you had to figure that stuff out by yourself, especially when dealing with unofficial copies of games. Although there are thousands of games for MS-DOS from back in the day, believe it or not, there is still some development going on for DOS today. We're taking a look at 3 of these gems today, games that were recently developed or are still under development for MS-DOS. Acronia from Hydrosour Software, Planet X3 from the 8-Bit Guy, and City Rampage from VBlank Entertainment. Oh, and after that, I have a special guest to show one of his choices for these quirky games from an alternative timeline.
First game I want to look at is Acronia. Acronia was built by a small indie software team called Hydrosour Software for the DOS game Spring Jam of 2021. I believe they have since done some more work on it, but it still lacks sound and I have run into some bugs, which is all okay considering this is a sharer of the pre-alpha version, so they're in the very beginning of development, but even so, this looks really good. With the framing of the screen and HUD on the outside to the right, it reminds me of the original 2D side-scrolling Duke Nukems. One thing that is a clear giveaway that they are influenced by Prince of Persia is the way your character hangs on ledges. Seems like a nod to the classic. The idea here is that you work on a facility that does experiments on human subjects, and an accident happens and you find yourself in the middle of all these mutants, and all you have to do really is survive. So you have to escape the building. To do that, you have guns, you have your classic color card mechanics to open doors, and all the general platforming experience. They expect to launch a physical copy at some point, and if it isn't priced prohibitively, I'll be one of the fans to get in line for a copy of my own. I really enjoyed this. City Rampage is a multiple platform game. It came out for all of these platforms, but also MS-DOS. It's from 2012, so not quite recent. It's already 10 years old, but that's about 15 years or so after MS-DOS became obsolete, so I think it's fair game. Let's take a look at that with our RapidCad system. Our hardware today is slightly too slow for the game. The game asks for at least a 4060X, and that's not what we have here. We're missing the math coprocessor, but it still runs, sort of. The game offers all of these different visual filters. It's kind of fun to mess with this, but I'd rather use it the way the game was intended to look like. As you can see, the game runs a bit slow, but it's fun. The game is basically a version of the original Grand Theft Auto, but with a bunch of nerdy references like Mega Man here in the scene, Doctor Who, and even Back to the Future. It's definitely fun. The one thing I find unfortunate is the lack of Sound Blaster support. I heard that the idea was to make the game fit in a single floppy disk. I don't really see why. You could have a few floppies or a CD and it would be fine, but it is what it is. I've played a bit of this game using the 3DS. Looks to me like it's exactly the same game. Of course, it's much faster using the 3DS. We're not limited by a 46 CPU in a 3D6 motherboard. And we can benefit from actual music and good sound effects besides the speed. So I set up the Rust bucket with its 160 MHz 486 to give the game a fair run, and here it is. This won't fix the sound, but it should fix the speed. Planet X3, as you may know, was developed by the 8-Bit Guy. It's really impressive to me he still develops games. He's got another one in development that's not quite ready for MS-DOS, Betsky Robots, but this one, Planet X3, has been out for quite some time. It's a real-time strategy game with simple mechanics. This is a sequel to a game he made for the Commodore 64, Planet X2. Like in most RTS games, you have to gather resources to protect your base and to build an army to conquer the map. In this one, you have to collect gas, energy, and crystals. You explore gas by building a collector on top of a gas vent, and you get energy by building a power plant with solar panels attached. The crystal to me is the most puzzling one, because you have to manually go and get it and take it to the smelter to be processed. So things to note here are, first, the music is great. It's ad-lib and sound effects are provided by the PC speaker. So what you're hearing here is direct audio capture of the game, plus speaker audio recorded by my smartphone and overlaid. Another thing is there's no mouse support. Once you get used to the system, it's not too bad. You switch units with tab and you can do that pretty fast, but mouse support, group control, and auto attack will take this game to another level. Maybe too much for the target he wanted to, because this will run in VGA on a 286 or even on a PC XT, provided you use a simpler graphical option like CGA.
So these are my 3 choices, and here's Rick from Rick's Random Retro to talk about one final game of his choice from this category of games recently developed for MS-DOS. Welcome to yet another video, my friend.
Hey Bruno, thanks for having me and happy Doscember. You know, I'm a sucker for a good puzzle game, and not many have captured me as much as Luminous did back on the PSP. The fusion of music time with the visual feedback was incredibly addicting, and the hours just melted away. It's a block-based puzzle game not too dissimilar to the legendary Tetris in that you have to clear blocks to improve your score. Careful positioning and strategy is key to making it into that high score chart. Well, did you know that you can play Luminous on a real DOS machine? Well, sort of. The game Lunis is what can be described as an homage, if not a straight copy of Luminous, but it's been ported to a lot of different platforms, DOS included. I found this game via the itch.io DOS End of Year Game Jam 2021, and while there were some pretty cool entries, Lunis stood out to me immediately since I poured so much time into Luminous. You do miss out on some of the polish of the original title, but otherwise it's a faithful recreation of the experience. We have 256 colors, crisp graphics, and FM synthesis music to tie it all off. Sadly, any sound effects are missing, which does take away a little bit from that experience. There are 6 stages to choose from that progress in their own way, all with their own music. And speaking of that music, it's really cool. Take a listen. You do have some options you can set inside of the game, including adding scan lines if you're playing this on a flat panel, but it's kind of moot on a CRT like this. Otherwise, you can set a high contrast mode and disable or enable the music, but there aren't that many options here. Lunis does try to stick pretty close to the source material, and that's good if that's what you want, but there isn't much beyond that here. Keep dropping those blocks, line them up just so, and use the occasional bomb that appears wisely, and you'll make it onto the high score chart in no time. Lunis is just about as addictive as the original game it's inspired by, except this time for DOS.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this last video of the year 2022. It was kind of a slow year, but I'm very thankful for you that stuck around and watched the videos. It's always a pleasure to talk to you on Twitter and on the comment section. I wish you a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year with lots of gaming with your family and friends, and I'll see you in 2023.